Well, good morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the painting studio. It's a beautiful sunny morning in Nebraska. It's cold, but a great day to be in the painting studio working on a decoy. In this session, we're going to paint this Magnum cork-bodied black duck drake gunning decoy. And if you haven't seen the carving series, I put a 4-part series together from beginning to end on the carving of this decoy. Now in this session, we'll get the decoy painted, and I think we can do that in one session. I'm going to use the scorched cork for the body of the decoy, so very little painting, maybe a little speculum here, maybe some light tertials back here, we'll see, and get the head painted, but not a lot of detail. If you're enjoying my channel and getting some value out of it, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That does help me out. It's totally free. And let's get going on painting this black duck decoy and finishing him up. Welcome back. I'm going to start by putting a little base coat texture on the feathered portions of the head. We'll leave the bill smooth. And to do that, I've got a mix of Liquitex heavy body acrylic, this burnt umber, and maybe 50% that, 50% white gesso to come up with this relatively thick base coat mix. And I'm going to use just a synthetic sponge to sponge that on the head of the bird. We have to mask off the body so we don't get this material on this cork surface. But we'll do that first. You may choose not to put texture on your bird. Some people prefer that, and this is just the way I do it, so I'm going to show you my technique. All right, I put painter's tape around the perimeter here so that as we're texturing, I don't get any of the material on the cork. And I am going to go ahead and paint the bill smooth. Just get an extra layer of protection on the bill prior to the finished paint colors, and just using a 1-inch wide brush so we get a nice smooth application. I'm going to paint underneath as well. The other thing that does is force some paint into this separation between the upper and lower mandible for protection again. Now I'm going to focus on the head, paint right over the eye, but go ahead and apply some of this material pretty liberally on the head. I'm going to try to not get too much paint build up down in the seam of the tape here. I want coverage, but not a big buildup of paint down there. Then I'm going to put a little of the paint on the palette and work that into this close-celled sponge. This is just packing material that I got with some electronics product a long time ago. You can buy this type of foam online. It's not expensive. But I'm using the sponge then to just put a little bit of texture on the head. And I like this because it gives us some texture differential between the bill, which is nice and smooth, and the head, which is soft. So I'm using the corner of that to just go down right to the tape line. I'm not going to worry about texturing under the throat there. It's just too hard to get in there. So I'll do that over the entire head and then come back. I'm going to use an X-Acto to remove this base material from around the eye. And we're going to paint over this eye again, but I like to remove material as I go, because when we remove the lighter color that we're going to put on the head, I don't want this base coat showing through if I cut through both layers. And the X-Acto won't scratch the glass eye. It's just a quick shot of the texture on the head. And you can see the reason for the masking tape. Okay, let's get some color on this guy. I'm going to paint the head a buff color, and that's a mixture of white gesso with raw umber and raw sienna to make this buff color. Just a little side benefit of making my own painting videos and having those for sale separately. I can refer to them every time I do a black duck. It really is nice to be able to just pull up the video, kind of remember the paint mixes I used previously. So let's get the head painted on this guy. I'm using a little angled brush. And this will probably take a couple of coats. I'm going to go right over the eye again. And the benefit of that is it forces paint down into that perimeter of the eye, so that when I remove that material, you're seeing this top coat and not the underlying texture coat. Just a quick shot after a couple of coats on the head. And I didn't mention the mix on this. This is rough, but I'd say 80% white gesso, 10% raw sienna, and 10% raw umber to kind of darken that down a bit. Just taking a little straight Josanya burnt umber and going around the perimeter here just to clean things up. Also to cover the DevCon 2-part epoxy, which has a shine to it. So we're just knocking down the shine and cleaning things up for any of the light that got down into this area. Okay, now I want to use the airbrush and darken the crown. I'm using Josanya burnt umber and putting that in a container with water and mixing that up to a consistency that I'll be able to spray in the airbrush. I've had this question before, does it have to be airbrush paint? But I do this all the time. You just have to get the right mix, and that's the challenge, and just take some experience to know how much pigment you need, how thin, what the viscosity should be in order to spray well. And sometimes it's trial and error with the airbrush, because I don't have a surefire method. I'm sure there are surefire methods. I'm just not a sophisticated airbrusher. All right, I had a little overspray, so I'm just taking some of the original base face color on a little filbert and scrubbing that through the overspray just to kind of soften it. And lighten that area just above the eye a bit. And I did want to note that while I was spraying, I hit along this. That wasn't good. I just drug light paint into my cork. So I'm just using clear water to scrub that off before it dries. But I put a little bit of a shadow under there just to soften that transition to the breast. So that took care of the overspray. For the tick marks, I have a combination of burnt umber with smoked pearl to lighten that a bit. And I've got just not a real sharp brush because I want these to not be too refined. And I'm just going in and laying in a series of ticks, just keeping the feather flow in mind, coming off the front, going downward over here. And I'm putting 2, 3, 4 kind of in little groupings. Trying to keep it to a single tick mark on each. And then doing some variation so that they don't all line up just in rows. You gotta watch I don't get too much water. That's about right. And then as I approach the neck here, I'm just gonna start pulling them back towards the rear, let them fade out. I'm not going to try to do tick marks under the chin there. There's a little blob I got right there. I'm going to let that dry and I'll come back with the lighter value and just clean that up. So these over the eye kind of wrap upward and around towards an imaginary center line there and back. So I'll do this over the entire face, and I've already done the other side, just to give you a view of that. Up here on the crown, I'm taking carbon black and just pulling in ticks through the burnt umber, just to darken the crown a bit and add some markings up here towards a center line. And then those will come together in the back. And now I've got a little of the face base color darkened with raw umber, and I added raw sienna to it as well. And I'm just gonna pull just a few lighter tick marks up into the and through the crown. Although the crown is nice and dark, you see these lighter feather edges blended in on the black duck's crown. I just want those to be pretty subtle. Now I want to darken the eye stripe, and I've got burnt umber on a little angled scrubber, and I'm just going to go in and scrub back and forth, try to get a blend so it's not just a harsh line. In front of and behind the eye, and then pull it down as it goes to the back. Want it nice and dark. It's just a good quick way to get a blended stripe going there. Kind of follow the cheek. That's about all we need. Coming back with a little carbon black, just focused on the center here of the stripe and just darkening things a bit and around the eye. For the bill, I'm using a mixture of yellow oxide with raw sienna, and then I added some raw umber to that to darken it somewhat, and a touch of green light. Those are all Josanya colors, and you see a wide variety of colors from a mellow yellow to a greenish hue on black duck drakes, and I like to put a little greenish tinge at the end of the bill. So I've just added more of the green light to that mix. I'm going to dry this, give it another coat. I'm going to use carbon black for the nail. And I'm going to wrap that underneath a bit. Just to give the appearance that the nail is protruding there a little bit. Now I want to get the nostrils located. Before I do the nostrils, I'm going to go this marking just along the cheek, just down, kind of dark in the corner, and some darkness on that lower mandible as well. Not trying to blend or anything, but put that in place. I'm going to use burnt umber to just go along the lower edge here. And then to come out from the end. Like that. Got the nostrils painted on in carbon black. Just add some nostril enclosure indication with the burnt umber. Took some of the original face base color and added the smoke pearl to it, and I just put a little eyelid there just to add some life. Now before I'm going to lighten the tertial area back here just a bit. Pretty characteristic from a distance. You can see that those lighter big tertials back there. And I want to add some speculum. But before I do that, I'm going to take some burnt umber, and I've got a little scrubber, 1/8 inch scrubber, and I've got burnt umber on the brush, and I'm going to go around the bird and look for areas like this where the wood is showing through or the cork is showing through, and just spot those areas so that they're not light. So here's an area right here on the back of the side pocket. I'm just scrubbing that burnt umber into the area to darken those light spots. And there's a few places like that around the tail where we did the gluing. So I'll darken those areas. And I want to get that done before I add any more to the bird. Got a little Nimbus gray mixed, darkened slightly with burnt umber, and I use this little scrubber to just kind of softly scrub that onto these tertial areas. Then I'm going to use carbon black just to do some quick outlines. I'm actually going to use burnt umber for that one. So I'll do these in carbon black. Bring them down here. Then I'm switching to burnt umber on the detail brush, and just, that's too much paint. Just put an indication of these tertials. And I'll go back with the carbon black and just put some quick quills in there. All right, that's all we need there. Now I've got some Nimbus Gray with raw sienna and burnt umber mixed in. And I'm just going in here and putting an indication of the primaries. We don't want this to be too light, but enough to be visible. I just faded those out here on the sides. Now I just want to put a little speculum and we'll be done with the painting. Got the speculum area penciled in. I've just got a little phthalo blue with a touch of white gesso to lighten it. I'm going to start with that color. And then I'm going to add Diox purple as we go towards the back. And then I want to blend those together. So we're full Diox purple at the back here. I've got a little dry filbert that I can use to kind of wet on wet blend across that transition. We're trying to simulate speculum iridescence without using iridescent paint on this gunner. And then we'll use straight carbon black back here. I know a lot of black ducks have the white edges, but I've been told a purebred black duck just has black on the trailing edge of the speculum. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'm going to do. I'll work with that a little bit, but it gives you an idea of what it looks like. This is probably a little too bright. I'll continue to blend that. Just a few final touches. I took some carbon black on this scrubber and just darkened the area above the side pocket here and faded that into the scapulars. Put a little dark under that primary group. Put a couple of marks through the speculum. I also took some carbon black and just scrubbed it down the center line here a little bit and kind of on the back of the cape to highlight the cape a little bit and the structure there. One more little detail, I just took some carbon black on a little scrubber and scrubbed a little structure into the between the nostrils there. All right, everybody, well, that completes the black duck project. We took this black duck from beginning to end in carving and painting, and it's been a lot of fun. Black duck's one of my favorite birds. Growing up in Indiana, we didn't see that many black ducks. When we did see them and were able to get one, it was a real prize, at least for me at that time. And I enjoyed doing this. I'll include some reference photos for your reference if you choose to tackle this project down the road sometime. Until next time, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you. Have fun.